Hello there, my name is RJ Bacamino, and today for my final presentation, I'd like to talk about microaggressions. I think we've heard that term a lot in the last few years, and it is very interesting, to say the least, on how it's kind of affected everyone's lives here. You know, a lot of people don't even think that microaggressions are real for the most part, and, there is some ideas of they are and what they aren't. So today let's go over what microaggressions should be about and what they're about. So microaggressions is a term used for commonplace daily verbal and behavioral or even environmental slights. And whether the person is being intentional or not, these microaggressions can cause a lot of issues for a person, especially in an office or school environment. You usually see microaggressions happening when a white person, like, white guy like me here, usually talking to a person lower on the patriarchal system, usually a minority figure or a person of the opposite sex, or even a person different orientation. In the picture here, I have many examples of what can be considered microaggressions. As you can see, the lady on the left here is holding a sign that says, "Why do you sound so white?" In regards to, many white people have a bias on how African Americans sound. And when white people do not hear what they perceive to be a quote unquote black voice, they wonder, why do they sound white? The second one is a picture from a woman that says, "No, where are you really from?" Another microaggression where it can honestly be an unintentional microaggression in a lot of ways, is people just generally want to know what a person's origin is, or where their relatives come from, and just don't know how to word it properly. It is still a microaggression though, because no one asks someone like me where I'm from. You only see people ask, "Where are you really from?" to people of color, such as African American, Asian, Latino, etc. And the last one here is kind of similar to that as well. "Can you read this?" And then it shows that they showed a Japanese character on their phone. Another microaggression, just assuming that someone of color, or Asian descent or any other descent, Latino descent, would know what a word is in a different language. That person of my stature here, the patriarchal demand, white man at the top of the patriarchal demand here, would assume that someone, an Asian woman would know, Japanese automatically, or something. "Hey, can you read," like, as it says, "Hey, can you read this?" It's another microaggression where, that one, it could be unintentional, but that one's usually more of a slight. Like I was saying, the patriarchal demand. As I mentioned, microaggressions are very awkward and uncomfortable for those involved, as many times the aggressions have to slide because the retaliation to it is not worth it. Having someone come up to you and say, "Where are you really from?" Retaliating to that usually ends up being a negative for the person who is dealing with the microaggressions. When someone asks in the office, one of their African American counterparts, "Know where are you really from?" If that person snaps back, they're the one that will most likely get in trouble with HR, and they don't want to lose their job over something, in the grand scheme is not life or death, but it is just a slight. And so it's hard to really deal with that when it's not necessarily it's not worth losing your job over, but it's still a slight. That's why it's called a microaggression, not a macroaggression. Microaggressions are slanted to those lower on the patriarchal system that we kind of made up, white man at the top, white straight man at the top, and then everyone else below. Like I said, they unfairly are slanted to those lower on the patriarchal system, while as white men tend to cause the most microaggressions. I have a video example here, and it's from The Office. I think everyone likes The Office, and while it's a satirical show, it shows these patriarchal demands and the white man, aka Michael Scott, using a ton of microaggressions. So let me just play this here real quick.
Sit tight until I return. Okay. All right. Ciao. Adios. Look at those wrinkles. Blacks do crack. Not crack the drug. We just defer to Mr.
Mr. Brown.
All right. Okay. First test. I will not call you that.
Well, it's my name. It's not a test. Okay?
I am the only one here who has a legitimate disability. Although I'm sure Stanley has had his fair share of obstacles.
I'm not disabled, and neither are you.
Hello, everybody!
Oh, good. I'm just in time for cake.
Oh, gotta beware! Mr. Horning, right? You know what I'm talking about.
Have a customer meeting?
Yeah, well, if you leave, we'll only have 2 left. Yes. Enjoy! Absolutely. Namaste. What is I'm Hitler. Serious? You really want us to roast you? It's easy, you are. That's offensive. I thought I'd drop in. There's wine. I would love a glass if you're gonna open it. Oh, come on, that guy? He's a good guy, not a terrorist. It is St. Patrick's.
And so basically that kind of shows, it's a satirical show, but it shows Michael Scott, who is the white boss, kind of getting away with all these microaggressions and, just flat out racism, while his coworkers and, the people he's in charge of have to kind of just sit there and take it because they don't want to be labeled as easily offended or worried that they're, if they react to it, they might get retaliation later on. So that's where it kind of has this unfair slight towards minority figures and people lower on the patriarchal, system. Like I said, there were some good examples of racial microaggressions in that piece also, just kind of, Michael Scott saying to Stanley, black do crack, but not the drug, like stuff like that. Racial microaggressions may be, in fact, one of the most prevalent types of microaggressions, especially in a class or office setting. While the person speaking the microaggression may not mean ill intent, they may be playing into long stereotypes of minority figures. A big microaggression that is often confused for, I thought it was just a compliment, is when white people say to African Americans, if their hair is real and that they can touch it. White people do that a lot where they think it's a compliment. Oh, that hair, your hair looks so beautiful. Is it real? Can I touch it? Whereas, it's kind of a microaggression that, like, of course it would be real. It doesn't translate the other way around. You wouldn't really ask that to anyone else. It just plays into stereotypes from the past. And then we can talk about the biases here also. Microaggressions, while it can be accidental, they can be a purposeful slight, especially when, older white men might say to minorities such as African Americans, "You're one of the good ones," or they might tell a Latino character that they're not part of a gang, like you're one of the good ones. It feeds into a speaker's racial biases towards an individual, even if they did nothing that would even cause that. You could meet someone for the first time who happens to be African American, and the person could say you're one of the good ones, and the African American person did nothing to even quantify a comment like that, let alone if that would be acceptable in the first place. And this can be the same idea regarding gender, sex, orientation, race, origin, anything really. If you're gay, someone might say, "Oh, you don't act gay." If you're a woman, they say, "Oh, well, you don't act ladylike." It can be used in any regard where it becomes a microaggression, where someone might say something that's purposefully slightful, even though they might take it and they might consider it a backhanded compliment of some sort, but it's still, at the end of the day, a microaggression. In conclusion, the way we can work around microaggressions is just being able to identify when they happen. And also just think about, do I have any microaggressions of my own? Anything I'm offended by, or have I said things that, others might be offended by? Self-awareness is key in spotting out biases and spotting microaggressions. Microaggressions are a touchy subject, and many think it's over coddling or, too PC nowadays, but in reality, it's not. They're not overreactions. You want to be treated with respect. And we just have to learn what lines we can't cross to show people that respect instead of unfairly putting him in a corner. With that, I hope you really enjoy this presentation.